The horrors in the haunted island of Poveglia. Thought to be the most haunted island in the entire world, the Italian government made it a law to forbid anyone to come close to its shores. But the intrigue and creepiness of this remote Italian island is just too strong for thrill seekers to ignore. In this video, we explore the spine-chilling horrors that happened in Poveglia Island. Number 5. The Graveyard of Plague Victims. The island, located between Venice and Lido, has been known for many odd things, but the most popular of them was how it was once used as a place to quarantine people who fell ill during the outbreak of the Black or Bubonic Plague in Europe. It was in the 14th century when doctors wearing those distinctive beaked masks began arriving onto the island, bringing with them patients of the plague. They would drop these poor souls off at Poveglia, where they would be left to die. The remains would then be burned in what we called plague pits, and you could find a lot of these mass graves in almost every corner of the island today. By estimates, there were more than 100,000 people that died, and whose bodies were burned on the island. As a result, the concentration of these organic materials is so high that it made Poveglia's soil very rich. According to some reports, more than 50% of the island's soil is composed of human ash. As such, grapes and other fruit-bearing plants and trees would tend to grow abundantly here, even without human care. Number 4. An asylum for the mentally ill. Around the 1920s, the existing buildings on the 18-acre site were converted to become an asylum for the mentally ill and for those who needed long-term hospice care. This went on until 1968, when the hospital was shut down and the island was totally abandoned and shut off to the public. In between those years, a huge number of mentally disturbed patients and those in vegetative state flocked to Poveglia, where they, like the plague victims, lived in total isolation, waiting for their time to come. This further enriched the already dark and unsettling rumors about the island. It also doesn't help that the remoteness of the place allowed some agents of medicine and science to do questionable things to their poor patients. Soon enough, reports of inhumane experiments and widespread abuse of medical personnel began to reach the mainland. But the witful choice to totally disregard this miserable population left the screams of the tortured unheard for years. Number 3. The wicked doctor who tortured mental patients. Legend has it that there was once a demented doctor who worked in the mental hospital, and apparently, his methods of treatment involved that of torture and pain. According to accounts, this doctor performed lobotomies on most of his patients, and it was usually against their will. This ancient and now banned neurosurgical treatment would involve severing nerve connections in some parts of the brain. As you can imagine, this invasive procedure would have the patient's head be hammered, chiseled, or drilled, and they're done with no anesthesia. As if not content with this, the insane doctor would proceed to gather all his patients and bring them up the hospital's bell tower. His crazy experiments would continue in that unlikely place. From there, the screams of his tortured patients could be heard throughout the island. This went on until the doctor began to hear screams of the plague victims. This eventually drove him so mad that he threw himself from that very bell tower. Some say that the fall didn't kill him. Rather, a dark mist gushed from the ground and choked him to death. Number 2. Unwanted Settlers. Shortly before Poveglia was barred from public access, the Italian government once put up the island for sale. There were those who actually bought and owned the island for themselves, but it didn't take long before they turned to sell it to another owner. In all instances that the ownership was passed around, the complaint was the same. The island's atmosphere was simply too heavy and morbid, and it's impossible to spend even a night there without having that unnerving, creepy feeling up your entire body. According to the previous owners, they could hear strange wailing sounds coming from all directions on the island. A family who recently purchased the island decided to build a private holiday home there. It was only their first night in Poveglia when horror struck the entire family, forcing them to flee and never return. According to reports, one of the children was brutally attacked by a mysterious entity. It was further found out that the kid's face was nearly ripped apart during that horrific incident. And number 1, the haunting persists. Ever since access to the place was restricted, there wasn't much tourism activity going on Poveglia Island. But foolhardy adrenaline junkies whose concept of fun involved encountering the ghosts of the dead would often find ways to let themselves get to the island. And there, all the bizarre tales heard outside were finally confirmed. There were some who actually managed to gather evidence of hauntings on the island. Paranormal investigators reported having been possessed by the restless spirits of Poveglia. There was also physical proof of unusual phenomenon, like eerie voices being recorded and caught on tape. Even more so, some video camera recordings claimed to have captured streaks of weird lights and black mist formations coming out of nowhere. Would you dare to set foot on Poveglia Island? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.